Hello and welcome to another episode of FinTech Focus TV with me, Toby. Today we are back over in the United States and I'm delighted to introduce you to Kenny Eon from Emburse. Kenny, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing today?
Yeah, really good. Thanks. Really good. Listen, lovely to have you on the show. Loads of good stuff to get involved in another area of where we've seen considerable transformation over the last couple of years. Loads to tuck into on that. But before we do that, can you introduce yourself and a little bit about what the company does?
Great. I'm Kenny Eon. I'm the GM and SVP of Europe for Emburse. We're a leader in spend management software. Really, our mission is to humanize work. And what we mean by that is there's a lot of manual processes that our finance professionals deal with today. And also the people that are traveling and doing expenses. And we just want to remove those. We want to take those manual tasks, make them automated, give people time back to do the things that mean more, whether it's their families or those more meaningful things within their work that contribute better to their company. So that's really, in a nutshell, what we're about.
I think the last couple of years has really sort of suited companies that have smoothed the path for businesses, that have made it easier to, I guess, remove a lot of the inefficiencies that we've traditionally seen and just live with, because that's the way it is. We've seen a massive wave of digital transformation that has allowed companies to purr rather than just exist at various different stages and improve all areas of their business. And COVID's been a big catalyst for for all of that. What we're looking at, and you mentioned beforehand about the sort of whole travel place and where expenses come in with the travel that we've seen in droves, and it's been a pause button for people to look at efficiencies and be better. I know you've gone through and embraced digital transformation, which has helped the business sort of really gain purchase and traction over the last couple of years. Give us a little bit of an insight into that.
Yeah, COVID was pretty amazing from that standpoint. There were so many things in the finance organization that I don't know if got, put to the side or, budgeting went elsewhere to the sales and marketing departments and things like that. And, it's funny, when COVID started, we closed our offices like everyone else. And we had one person continue to go in our office, and that was our CFO, because we still got checks, customers still mailed checks in. And then paying companies, we had to cut checks. And it just was amazing from that standpoint. In finance, like all the finance professionals realized, wow, we are doing so many things manual. We're spending so much time on these things. And it took, honestly, a pandemic to make everyone realize we need to have a digital transformation. We need to make our systems better. And there's been a huge growth in the FinTech and finance technology space around all that, whether it's, payments or, invoices coming in, invoice processing, so many things that have been brought to light. And in addition, the pause of travel has allowed companies to actually take the time and look at their travel policies and look at where they spend their dollars or euros or pounds, and it's been pretty enlightening for everyone.
And with that, look, there's been a lot that's going through my head over the last couple of years about the gains that have made in terms of business efficiency. And actually, I think this is a story I may have told over time a couple of times before, but I was driving back up in one of the first lockdowns back up into London, and it was just after things opened back up. And I remember how people were talking about the rivers running clean in Venice and all this sort of stuff, and how pollution had gone down. And I drove through after a hot day, Clapham Common, which is a big green area in the middle of London, and I saw that people had been out the night before and it was absolutely filthy and littered. And I thought maybe this whole idealistic sort of state of everything changing and becoming a lot better may be forgotten as soon as people go back to normal life. You've spoken there about travel and its changes and people recognizing the efficiencies, and having a US business myself, looking at the frustration of checks being sent over and checks in the post being language that was still very much prevalent in the US before all of this. Do you think this is a sort of hiatus, or do you think we'll return to the bad old days, or is this something that's that is a change for good?
I think, like anything, it's going to happen in waves, in different groups, right? We see one thing we talk to a lot of our customers about, and just everyone in the industry, is this is a great time to implement these things. It's a great time to revamp your policies, to look at where you're spending, because it's slower. It's a little slower in that aspect. And we see a lot of leading companies, doing that. They're taking this time. They're, one thing that they're diving into a lot is looking at their data and their analytics and looking at where they historically spend. Because the difference too is everyone believes travel is going to come back, and we see it, until a variant comes along and it slows it down a little bit. But it is coming back, but it might not come back totally to the same levels it was at. So I think what we're going to have is we're going to have some people that have long memories with it and some people that have short memories. Yeah. Where I think the leading companies will have put better policies in place, will have revamped their systems, and will be much better and much more efficient on the other side of this. And the other ones that kept, kind of kicking that can down the road will probably revert back to, what they were doing pre-pandemic.
Yeah, where we hear about people sort of flying over for lunch meetings, transatlantic flights for a lunch and then back on the red eye. It's been some remarkable inefficiencies over time. Data is something I think is always really interesting, because sort of there's a lot of sexiness about data and analytics and the new gold that everyone's spoken about. But I also think there's a sort of lack of real intelligence and use cases sometimes about how people are using their data. You're seeing something different in terms of clients turning data into actionable results as well, are you?
Yeah, we are. We're a big ask from our customers, and a big thing we've grown in our businesses around our data and our analytics. And it's not just like you think about what we're doing, you're touching so many different areas. It's not only just, how much did someone spend at a coffee shop or, on a flight, but it's also tying to other systems that have different data. I mean, I was looking at we have one customer that did analytics. We did a case study on them, and they recognized about $500,000 in spend they can save through doing things differently, through changing their policies. And that's a case study on our website. It's a really neat case of just taking that time and saying, wow, do we really need to fly from New York to London for a lunch meeting? Can we do that over Zoom? Or can we tie more things in there? And you're kind of removing some of that waste from what we've done in the past. So
that's a phenomenal amount of waste as well we're talking there, right?
I mean, if you look at travel budgets, pre-pandemic, they were huge. Yeah. Really monster-sized budgets that companies had. And myself in a more of a go-to-market side, I can hop on a flight to London whenever I want, pre-pandemic, and great. We got one meeting. Let's go do that and then turn back around. And I think we need to be smart about that. And a lot of companies are looking at that saying, wow, we saved a lot of money to the bottom line here that we can reuse that money into things that will generate more revenue for a business.
Plus, of course, the ESG side of it as well, when you look at all of those sort of aspects, which people have become a lot more aware of, I think, over the last couple of years too.
You mentioned, the canals in Venice, that clearing up with less boat traffic, and, skies clearing up a little bit with less airline traffic during the peak of the pandemic. I think that woke a lot of people up too about all the travel and how that impacts the climate and all that stuff. So there's some of that stuff that I think came to light too.
And that's allowed significant levels of innovation within your business, and there's often conversation about prevention or cure, but I love the fact that you're looking at it and saying, right, how do we look at this issue of expenses and improve it? And that's where cards are coming into play with some of the things that you've been doing. Tell us a little bit more about what you're doing there.
Yeah, so traditionally, for a lot of businesses, when I went on a trip somewhere, I'd either use my corporate card or use my personal card and just, tap or swipe as I went. And the only control in place was when I submitted my report, whether it was in policy or not, and whether the company was going to reimburse me. I already spent it, especially if it was on a corporate card. I truly already spent it. And there's very few times a company's going to say, well, the policy's here, I'm going to reimburse you less. So one thing that's really come up too is companies wanting to control their spend better. And one way to do that is to control it before it's even spent. So we see a lot of change in our industry. A lot of customers asking for different ways to manage spend. So virtual cards, have become a big part of it, where you can issue a card for a trip. So if you I'm going to London for a trip, I can get a card issued for a trip with controls and policy spend by merchant codes on that. And we're not unique to this, but this allows me as a company to really say, here's what you can budget, here's what you can spend, and I'm controlling that before it even happens, versus getting a report in and saying, am I going to reimburse you or not?
I mean, it makes perfect sense, doesn't it? And I often talk about the fact of common sense and common practice not being the same thing at various different stages. What's been the reaction to that?
I think a lot of people are for it. These things we're talking about too are never going to completely replace a true corporate program, because there's other things too where we have plenty of employees that aren't part of that you want to issue a card to. They might not even have a credit card. So those people kind of like it. You know what I mean? And a lot of people are kind of, I think, tired of putting stuff on their own. And the company and the companies like it too, where it's like, here's your, I can really track that for this one event. I have better reporting on it after it happens.
And that's sort of, that reporting and control is something which companies are looking for, because there's some fairly stunning figures and numbers behind the sort of fraud effectively that's around employee expenses, which is a massive drain on companies, full stop. How does that help with this?
Yeah, fraud's huge. I mean, the thing about this is when you have the card, you have more data. So like if I go use my personal card, some stuff will come in, a receipt will come in. You don't really know what I spent that on, and people have been, gaming the system for a long time.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different ways they can do it. With owning the cards, you have all the transaction data. You have much richer data, and you can see what they're spending on. So it does help. I will say it's not going to alleviate all the fraud overnight. There's other things like audit and analytics that are going to have to help with that. But this will really deter a lot of that, where people might have done something, a little shady before, but now that they know that the data is going to be a lot clearer and someone can see all that, they might choose not to do that in the future.
Preventative as much as anything else. And you mentioned audit there as well. I know that's something else that you guys have put a lot of time and effort into over the last couple of years. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing with audit.
Yeah, so we have, what we're doing is part of our big push with analytics and talking to our customers is they want deeper insights into where people are spending fraudulent expenses. You think about just in the pandemic, how many flights got canceled and how many people have future flight credits. Do you think the companies can even track that? The company paid for that. They reimbursed someone for that. But is that person using that for their next business flight, or are they using that for a personal flight? We've seen other things like where someone gets reimbursed miles, but they also charge petrol and gasoline on that same trip. So there's a lot of things that data and audit can do to pick up on just some small things that turn into big amounts of money in the long run as it builds.
And this has obviously been a drain for businesses over time. Why is it sort of coming into focus now?
I think it's another thing in the pandemic time on this side, where for these teams pre-pandemic doing the travel expense, they're thin teams. Finance doesn't always get all the headcount compared to the other departments. And it's a little bit more time to be able to dig into this. Also seeing the savings, CFOs are seeing major savings over the pandemic on travel, on those travel budgets. And they're saying, okay, how can we continue to be smart and still travel and do the things we need to do to grow our business? But how can we minimize some of that too? Because that can go right back into the bottom line, or right back into other areas that can grow a business faster.
And that's it. It's about another business here where, and this is what I love talking to about businesses that help businesses travel further, faster, and better with more efficiency and greater control. So that's an interesting sort of format of your business, over the last couple of years, and it's sort of almost like the caterpillar into the butterfly in terms of the move into the whole fintech world a little bit as to where you're going. Talk to us about what it looks like and what the future holds for the business.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it. We're really moving towards that fintech side. Prior to the pandemic, you would ask me what we were. We were a travel and expense management company. We always talked about travel and expense together. Post-pandemic, it's more about, it's always the expense part, but it's about invoicing and business payments. It's about cards and managing that spend, and also issuing cards for other types of spend where you normally would have to cut like an invoice for someone for a marketing event, where you could just give them a card and they can do that, instead of someone having to do a wire or something like that. So it's about moving towards truly that part of that digital transformation, about the other side of it into fintech.
That's exciting change for you and where it goes as a business. So talk to us about that sort of thing. Does it mean growth plans for you? Is it massive change within the business, or is this an evolution of what you guys have always been pointing towards anyway?
It's really an evolution. Even pre-pandemic, we were moving into those spaces. We did accelerate during the pandemic because the market shifted, and it's actually a really good thing. We got there faster, so it's natural evolution of where we were heading. But I think we've gotten there faster with that, and it really has shown us that's the place to go, and we're heading there quickly, and I think we're being very effective with that.
So, and with regards to the sort of wider market, that this is a space where we have seen a lot of innovation, and if there's three words that have probably been overused over the last couple of years, it's probably innovation and transformation are probably two of those that have been in there. And you can throw digital in as the third.
Yeah, exactly.
So we've seen a lot happening across the whole fintech space. We've seen a lot happening directly in your world. If you to get your crystal ball out and say what you think is going to be really hot in 2022, what are some of the things that are going to be really moving the market? Where would you put that?
I would say the direction we're heading, where the market is heading towards heavily into cards and fintech and payments. You can see that across the industry. There's a lot of investment coming in the space. There's a lot of interest from customers and analysts around that. That's really where we see it heading. Like travel will come back, travel's come back, but the focus won't be there as much as these things that help a company be smarter about their spend, see where they're spending their money, and use that to the full capacity, and then take those savings and put them elsewhere into the business to help continue to grow their business faster.
Yeah, which is again, I think if it's increasing time, saving money, reducing general cost, etc., those are some of the big drivers I think in the fintech space have just been removing friction from the system, allowing people greater speed, dexterity, ability, and options to make their businesses better have been the sort of fundamentals of what we've seen around that.
Yeah.
I think everyone who I've spoken to has learned a lot over the last couple of years. There's things there which they'll take away and say, these are some of the things which I will take on for the rest of my career. I'm sort of ambushing you a little bit with this question, but it's just sort of popped into my head from what we're talking about. If you were to say some of the things that you would take away as being really important that you can share, that's going to be useful to people who are listening to this and thinking about what they can take away from the last couple of years as well. Talk to me about some of the big learns that you've had as both individually and as a business over that time.
Yeah, the pandemic was really, really eye-opening for myself, and I think for a lot of people, because in life, you go, right? I've got a family, kids growing up, you just always, going, you're trying to grow your career and your business. And it was kind of one of those first time, I think, in my life that it was just like, we're pausing. Lockdown I've never experienced lockdown before. And we paused and made like me personally reflect on a lot of things. Pre-pandemic, I traveled a ton. And it's like, post-pandemic, do I need to take every single one of those trips and be away from my family? So it's a lot of those things where it's like I got into some other hobbies, health became a bigger thing, like, okay, I got time to pause, smell the roses, you know what I mean? So I think that's not going to change where a lot of, and it was, you've seen it too, where people have moved throughout the world, and at least here in the States, they moved to rural areas, they moved elsewhere, and they said, you know what, I don't need to live in that rat race. I don't need to do these things. I can have a better way of life. And I think that ties to your professional and your personal life. At least for me, it has, where it's like, I love working. I love building businesses and going, but it's also kind of gave a better balance back to the life. What's really important for me, personally, professionally. So that pause was really eye-opening. I'm thankful of the pandemic for that part of it.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. Look, I'm a big believer in turning negatives into positives, and there's been a lot that's been absolutely awful about the last couple of years, but there's been a lot as well at the same time. I think it's allowed us to sort of reflect and do things better. I'm really interested about this because I've got my theorems about what happens to travel and whether we do revert back to, as I said before, whether we do revert back to type with everything that's happened and lose the lessons that we've gained in this time. Talk to me about your business and as you say, doing more over Zoom. I imagine a lot of it before, as you say, was traveling face to face with customers, getting all over the place, being to Jerry Maguire in the living room, etc., and all that sort of stuff. How's that impacted your pitch, your sale? How much easier is it to sell in person than it is over Zoom? And is there a trade-off there? Do we need to go back to the old relationships of before?
There is a trade-off. Zoom's been great. It's been a really great resource for all of us. And I think we'll continue to use it for a lot of those meetings that we might have went in for half an hour, quick meeting or something like that. And it's replacing the phone call, which is great if you put a personal touch on things. But it's not the same as when, you're with a coworker or you're with a customer or a prospect, and either you're in a conference room together and you can really look in the white of each other's eyes, or maybe you're out to a pub and having a beer or something like that. And those social settings, we're very social people. I don't think that we're never going to change that. It's kind of like a push and pull around that part. I think we do need to go back to more in person because we just build a better connection. Like you and I are doing this over Zoom. it'd probably be a lot different if we were together in person. You know what I mean? And this has been great. But so I think there's going to be some shift back to it because we all want that. And we see the same thing in our business with meetings. Like we want to get together. We want to be together because you build a culture better when you're in person. Yeah. And you're not just in that meeting, but you're at the water cooler and those other things where you really get to know someone.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. It's going to be very interesting to see what develops over the next couple of months and years as well. Kenny, look, what you're talking about is something I absolutely love. It's about improving efficiencies and helping companies sort of take things which have just been traditionally, this is the way it is, and improve them and make life better because of it. Make life better in terms of efficiency, make life better in terms of general business, make things cheaper and smoother, and save money for businesses as well. There's going to be plenty of people who are looking at this, nodding and thinking, do you know what, that's exactly something we should have done something about beforehand as well. Plenty of eyebrows raised when you think about some of the the cost and the fraud that can happen with people who you're trusting, which I always think is a real disappointment when you see that sort of stuff. And this is about making sure we never get to that sort of stage, because it's not just the impact of losing a few pounds here and there, it's the impact of what happens to the people who've made those sort of choices in their career as well. It's can be catastrophic for the business at various different stages. So what I think you're doing is significant to every single company. There'll be people, as I say, who are watching this who really want to find out more, reach out to to the business and talk to you. What's the best way of them doing that, and who should be talking to you at the same time as well?
Yeah, I mean, I would just go to call us or go to our website, emburse.com. And it's really the finance team. And that's who we work with the most. It might be the CFO, it might be the controller, it might be someone on their team. But people that are thinking about these things, concerned about this, and wanting to be more efficient in the business and control and spend more, would be great people to speak to.
And all the way through from SME through to enterprise.
Yeah. Business size. The neat thing about our business is we've really come together through mergers and acquisitions, and we're not a one size fits all. We have different products for different customer profiles. So really from SMB, it could be, a one person, startup to a global Fortune 50 company. We have the right product set there, and so no one's excluded from it.
Perfect. Well, Kenny, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Thanks for sharing it and being so generous in giving us your time today. And I hope that lots of people who are watching this get in touch with you very soon. Kenny, it's been absolutely great fun. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, appreciate the time. Thanks for having me on. Thank you.
No problem at all. And thank you all for watching. We will see you soon on our episode of FinTech Focus TV. Thanks a lot.